how could she cut it off and him not waking up and stopping it?
Well, it wouldn't take long to cut it off, would it?
Sparko drunk, right? He might have been.
Yeah,
what did
maybe.
she do? A knife or some scissors?
A knife.
Yeah, but that's quick, isn't it? Just one swoosh,
swift movement, fine. I mean, she's kind of like...
There's no bone in there, is there, to cut through?
Why is it called a boner?
Humans are the only mammal without a bone in it.
What?
And it's called a boner.
Humans are the only mammal without a bone in their penis.
Welcome. We are Neil,
Luke,
and Dave.
340-somethings, reminiscing on the runners and riders of 90s guitar music.
we look at the bands who soundtracked our youth on both sides of the pond and interview some of our heroes from the bands that defined a generation.
You'll hear about the good, the bad, and the ugly of 90s guitar music.
This podcast is Stupid and Contagious. Episode 45 of the Stupid and Contagious podcast. This week we're doing, I think it's WAG number 9. We're doing a Riot GRRRL
10,
Special.
I think. 10.
10, stand corrected. Good job, you're on the ball. WAG number 10. We're going to do a Riot GRRRL Special. This is the one that everyone's been waiting for.
I'm not sure people have been waiting for it.
Who specifically has been waiting for it now?
Well, Lucas.
Can't handle the pressure, man.
He's been waiting all his life for this moment. Hang on about Riot GRRRL for an hour.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, before we get into that, Dave, you had a haircut. I can see it.
No, it's just greasy and dirty. I apologise to anyone watching that has to look at it. Well, I did want to mention how I had a bit of a guilty pleasure listening to Frida and Barry on last week's playlist.
Did you laugh?
I did, actually. I thought I'll get ChatGPT to generate a few more verses to keep the fun going.
By the way, people, this is a Victoria Wood song Dave's talking about. If you didn't listen last week, this is a Victoria Wood.
Go back and have a listen.
Hilarious song. Go on, Dave.
So I asked it to generate some more verses, and it did. They were rubbish. They weren't good. I'm not going to put you through them.
Yeah.
But what was interesting was it knew Victoria Wood's accent. So in one of its rhymes, it rhymed ant and plant, because she would say plant. So that was impressive. No, Victoria Wood's song was much better than GPT.
I thought you were going to say, because ChatGPT couldn't do it, you wrote some yourself. I thought you were about to say.
I couldn't possibly come anywhere near.
Freestyle it. Go Harry Mack style. Freestyle it.
I think the only one that's got the talent for that is you, Luke.
I'm not doing it.
Luke, what the fuck does that T-shirt mean, for a start?
It's record label, Say Hell Sounds. Yeah.
Good old Say Hell Sounds.
Dealing mostly kind of North African music. Some really cool stuff on the label.
Yeah, I know. I know who they are, obviously.
It's got a bloke riding a camel, like a space camel. It's all right, isn't it?
Yeah, I like the space camel. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
What have you been up to?
Not a lot. Finished the tour of the bathhouses. That was pretty good. Did 5 in the end, 5 different ones.
Why didn't you stick to one?
It's more fun, isn't it? Just exploring Tokyo.
Yeah, but we sort of didn't really go into it. But what do people do when their showers are fucked over here? We don't go to bath.
Exactly. I was going to ask the same question. I forgot to ask it. Yeah. What do people do?
You just have to have a flannel wash, don't you?
Yeah, wash in the sink.
Is that enough?
Downstairs.
Not really, but I think that's what people would have to do.
There's certainly no bathhouses around here, my friend.
There needs to be. Yeah, I mean, a couple of them had a slight gay vibe, which is understandable, I guess.
Isn't it?
Yeah. Right. Yeah, it was good, man. 5 completely different ones.
Yeah. What do you mean vibe?
Oh, just kind of a couple of blokes sucking each other off in the corner, that kind of thing. Just the vibe,
Yeah.
No, it's good. You, Neil?
I really have done nothing. Just been working on the van, putting some insulation in, but it's really uninteresting at the moment. Just doing boring
insulation?
stuff.
Tell us more.
Yeah, exactly. There's not much more to tell. So, yeah, not really. But I've had a good week this week with downloads, uploads,
really?
Subscribers. Yeah, the Daisy Chainsaw one's been really popular.
Brilliant.
bringing new people in. So, yeah, please do keep spreading the word because we don't advertise. We rely on people sharing it with their friends and stuff. So please do keep doing that so that we can grow it and get more guests on that we can share with you. But yeah, appreciate all the love. Just thought I'd mention that we've had another good week. So if you are watching this one, then please do like, subscribe to the channel and leave a comment below. Get involved in the comments. And if you are listening, then please do rate and review because it really does help the podcast get found. We've got quite a back catalogue now, haven't we?
It's really good. There's loads of stuff there, and it's good. The archive.
There's some really good stuff on there. Yeah.
There
Not
is
just
actually.
saying
There
that.
is.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
good. When you do new episodes, like the one before, kind of, it doesn't get forgotten, but everyone's on the new episode. But yeah, go back and make sure you've had a listen. Some good.
Can you believe we spoke to Kermit from Black Grape?
I know.
That was mad,
Nuts.
wasn't it?
Yeah, it's a really good one.
Or Shed 7 when they were #1 in the charts.
Shed 7, Roddy in his dressing gown. It's all there.
His dressing gown. Iconic stuff.
And I had one more thing.
Go on.
Oh, well, you had your admit.
It is
We've already
relevant.
done
It
your
is
slot.
relevant. Well, but this morning, my son declared that he's just got into Nevermind and declared it the best album ever.
Okay,
Oh,
already.
man. That's
But-
brilliant.
But it made me think that maybe there's an audience there for the podcast.
Right.
Oh, you-
Of that
right,
You don't want your
generation.
son listening to this, do you?
No,
No.
not really.
But that's really cool to hear, man. I bet you're pretty proud.
I told you
Yeah.
that my niece is really into Nirvana and stuff. It's the 30-year echo, isn't it? Like you
It's the
said.
echo, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you pat him on the back and say, I'm proud of your son?
I thought that.
Yeah.
You
Same
didn't
as.
say
innit?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't actually do that. But,
No. Yeah, you're English. None of that.
but maybe the 90s music is pretty good after all.
Of course it is.
But when I come round to your house later to watch the football, maybe I'll wear a Nirvana tee or something to make myself look cool in front of your son.
Do it.
Yeah. Yeah. You're going to really impress
A
him.
bit odd, but do it.
I had the Nevermind album cover with the track listing on the back.
Was it a long sleeve tee?
No, it wasn't. No.
A lot of long sleeve tees around in the time, weren't there? But you don't really get them anymore, do you?
Yeah.
Long
Yeah.
sleeve
What was your
tees.
favourite long sleeve back then?
Well, your fucked one was good.
Oh, that was a good one, wasn't it? Yeah. With
like
the
that
for
one.
people that don't know, with the forward sign, but FUCT. Yeah.
Yeah, that was,
I
that
like
was
that.
cool. I always envied.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd have been allowed to wear it in my house, so
Right. Yeah.
I was always envious. Nige would have gone nuts. He wouldn't have stood for that.
I bet he wouldn't. Yeah. Also, your Cliff Richard listening mum would not be happy with that.
So yeah,
Yeah.
I was always very envious when you just wore yours as if it was nothing. Do you know what I mean?
Hey.
Although I do remember your mum going mental when you got your nose pierced.
Yes. That was specifically because I asked, and she specifically said no. And then, if you remember, so I asked before, she said no, and then she went to, because she used to be a travel agent at that time. Do you remember?
Yeah,
She went
that's
to
right,
I don't know, some weekend thing where she was being shown something for some travel company. So she was away for the weekend, and so we went into Brighton. Into that little arcade.
That's
Remember that
right.
little arcade between by Churchill Square? I went in there and got it done when she was away for the weekend. So it's not that I think it's because I specifically went against her wishes. That was why she was pissed off. But after a couple of
'cause
weeks, she was like, "Oh, I quite like it." After a couple of weeks,
Yeah,
so,
because your mum was pretty easygoing. She was the cool mum. We always liked going around there and hanging out.
yeah, she was. Still is.
But yeah.
Yeah.
I forgot you had your nose pierced till then.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get on to the subject of this week's episode, shall we?
Right, girl.
Let's do it. Yeah, so this is your forte, Luke.
Well, it's not at all. It's not at all.
You
But
know
it's something
more
I do.
about it.
I'm interested in. Yeah.
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 Me and Dave have been immersing ourselves in it as well this week. So
I tried to do research for this episode without using the internet. That was my challenge to myself.
oh right, why?
Don't know.
It's a lot of
Brilliant. So you got rid of the best resource.
Yeah. Brilliant. I got this little resource I plucked from my shelves. All of this stuff.
You could have just gone on the internet.
No. Too easy.
Fuck it.
Dip it into that little lot. Yeah, no, I wouldn't pretend to be an expert or anything, but it's something that I'm into, and I'm interested in the whole history of it and surrounding it.
Yeah, looking into it this week, it is interesting. So tell us, where did it all start?
Right. So early 90s, basically 1991, and the action plays out basically in two parts of the US. So you got Olympia in Washington State, and you've got Washington DC on the other side of the country, basically.
Yeah. Why is that? I saw that's where Bikini Kill's from. Those two places. I've thrown you off the tracks, haven't I?
No. They're not from DC. They basically they got together in Olympia. Kathleen, I think she's from like Maryland originally, so from neither of them, but it's near DC. And but she was in college in Olympia, basically. So Kathleen Hanna. So she was doing she studied photography, and she was doing like arty stuff, and they'd made this feminist art space and all of that. And the way she tells the story is she was doing like spoken word stuff, like feminist spoken word stuff. Actually, I've got a 7-inch of a spoken word stuff there. It's really intense shit. Yeah. And the way she tells it in her book is she went to see, do you know the novelist Kathy Acker, American novelist, journalist? Side fact, she wrote a book called Empire of the Senseless. Which is where, where Senseless Things took the title of their third album, is it? I guess the third album. Yeah. Anyway, she went to one of her kind of events and spoke to her and told her what she was doing, and she said, "Don't waste your time doing spoken word. No one comes to spoken word. You got to start a band if you want to get your message out. You got to start a band." So so she went home and started a band, and that's Bikini Kill came into being.
That's not what I've got here.
Go on in.
I mean, it's probably a similar story, but I've got that Bikini Kill was the name of the fanzine to start off with, and then it became a band. Is that right?
No, I don't think so. No.
Well, that's what it said in
Wikipedia.
I
might have. Yeah, that might be true. Yeah. Well, the whole thing was based around fanzines, right?
That's right. Yeah. It's quite
zines,
heavy.
you mean?
Zines. Yeah.
Yeah, I like the zine movement.
It's kind of cool, though. And I guess the main thing is it's far more of a political and a social movement than it was a music movement.
Yeah, it wasn't just the music.
It's just the medium, right? It's just a way to get the message out.
Yeah. It was a direct response to the sort of male-dominated sort of punk at the time that didn't really include women. Is that right?
Yeah, it was. So if you got to think about the difference between the two cities, so like Olympia in Washington is where K Records is based. I often wear the T-shirt. We talked about it on the In Utero Wang. So that is a very kind of so you got to that side of Riot Grrrl was very kind of like cardigans and glasses and sensitive boys, and it was a very female dominated scene there. Basically, it was all about DIY and fanzines and being nice, and it's all kind of twee and lo-fi basically. Then the DC side is the punk side, so that's dominated by Discord Records, which is owned by Ian Mackay, who's we talked about Fugazi quite a few times on this on the podcast. So he's kind of, you got the K Records scene in Olympia with Calvin Johnson, that kind of sensitive indie thing, and you got the punk rock, which is much more political in DC, led by Discord Records. So if that helps, that's kind of the Riot Grrrl was like a balance between those two.
But when did the term come up? You talk about she was doing spoken word, and then presumably no one had uttered the words Riot Grrrl at that moment. No,
so that was definitely the name of a zine that came from. But it was written by Kathleen Hanna and a couple of other people.
But what I think's interesting about the Riot Grrrl scene is that they defined it themselves. Most scenes are defined by someone else, but Riot Grrrl was there.
It was very anti-capitalist as well. The whole point was they controlled the means of production, and they created it themselves. They didn't allow other people to kind of reinterpret and put their own name on it. That's why it was so underground.
Did they have a manifesto?
They did. Yeah. Did you read it?
I thought they had one, but I haven't read it.
They did. It came out in the second issue of Riot Girl magazine. Do you want a few parts from the manifesto?
Yeah, how realistic was it?
Oh, it's very realistic. So as I was just talking about, one of the points is because we must take over the means of production in order to create our own meanings.
Taking full control.
Exactly. Yeah. There's a lot. They're all really interesting. Again, one of them is because we hate capitalism in all its forms and see our main goal as sharing information and staying alive instead of making profits of being cool according to traditional standards. So kind of operating outside the mainstream is a big part of it as well. The feminist side of it, because we're angry at a society that tells us girls equals dumb, girl equals bad, girl equals weak. And it's all about as well kind of being supportive of each other as well. It says because we see fostering and supporting girl scenes and girl artists of all kinds. It's integral to this process. And the idea that girls are a revolutionary force that can and will change the world, basically.
I can't remember where I found this. I think I might have watched a documentary or something, but apparently sniffing glue back in the day. I think the title of the article was Punks Are Not Girls. So they were very much sort of kept out of that.
Is that
scene.
Right.
I didn't realise all this. I didn't know it was such a male-dominated scene.
Especially if you think about DC, which is where like US hardcore was based, basically. So bands like Minor Threat and all of that, and you've got these like skinhead, like dudes, because they're straight edge, they were all kind of like muscled up and all that, right? And they're kind of slam dancing, and it's
Is that what you're doing in the bathhouse?
I mean, you could call it that. It's one word for it. So at that scene, girls were called coat racks, because they just stand at the side, and the boys would hand them their coats and go into the mosh pit and slam against each other. And it was physically impossible for girls to join in that, right?
Yeah, and apparently there's a bit of sort of sexual abuse going on as well in the crowds and stuff.
Yeah,
a bit like Woodstock, that infamous Woodstock. So all of that
Sounds
sort of
well.
Yeah,
I mean, who was the only person that spoke out about Woodstock '99 at the time?
I did.
No, it wasn't you, Neil. They got an award at whatever the big award show, and they said, I think we need to speak about all of the sexual abuse and the rapes that just happened at Woodstock. It was Ad Rock from the Beastie Boys.
Okay, yeah.
Who is married to
Kurt Cobain.
Close, Kathleen Hanna.
No, yeah, that is cool. Yeah. So there's all that going on, wasn't there?
There was, and a big part of it, like the name of the pretty much the definitive kind of book about Riot Girl is called Girls to the Front. So that was what they did. So they basically they made the girls physically come to the front of the stage, because they physically carved out a space for women, basically, which is incredible, right?
And apparently, like Kathleen Hanna at their shows, because some blokes did come along, obviously. If any of the blokes got a bit hecklery, she would just get in there and
escort them out.
Yeah, I heard say that the girls to the front was partly for protection.
Yeah, to form a line. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
To protect them from the blokes. But they're also physically carving out a space that didn't exist for women before, and it doesn't now, right? I mean, mosh pits are not a place that is safe, right? So it's physically carving out a space. It's great.
Well, they're not even safe for weak men like us.
Like you two. Yeah.
Did my nose in.
Dave's never been the same. I nearly got my trousers ripped off. No, I like all that. It's good. Yeah, it was a cool little movement. It kind of makes me feel like I wish I'd got more into it at the time. A lot of the stuff we talk about makes me feel like that. I didn't get involved enough in all of that at the time.
But not many people did. It was a really small scene until it kind of went overground, which we can talk about in a minute. But okay, so they started in Olympia, so it's Bikini Kill, basically. They were like the first band. So they went to to Washington DC for the summer in 1991. And here, hey, don't blame me. I'm just a messenger. My guy is there again. He was pivotal in the history of Riot Girl. In Svenonius. So basically, Nation of Ulysses, his band at the time, they kind of took Bikini Kill under their wing, took them on tour. They stayed with them they had like a house in DC called the Embassy, because they were a nation, right? And they stayed with them at the Embassy. Kathleen was dating one of Nation of Ulysses for a while, and they took them out on tour. And basically, they were a pivotal point for Bikini Kill and the whole Riot Girl movement. So Ian Svidonius to the rescue once again. There's nothing the guy can't do.
We've got to get him on, but I've
got to learn who
he pops up everywhere.
Yeah, I'd still need to learn as well, Dave. I think Luke knows.
It's just this word that Luke keeps saying every other week.
He's
intertwined into the fabric of the 90s music.
We'll get on to the bands in a minute, but am I right in thinking it's kind of like the last real sort of punk movement, like the true
I think
punk?
It was. Yeah. And I would say it's the last political movement in music as well. The last political movement and the last proper punk movement. I think it was. What do you think?
But what other explicitly political music movements are there? Just to get us thinking. Well,
original punk was pretty political, right? They've had all the bands in the 80s, like we talked about it with the Farm, the kind of the Red Wedge and all of that, right? So you had that political movement in the 80s.
The Riot Girl movement as well, that they specifically went back to the whole DIY punk ethos, simple guitars, just go out there and play your music even if you can't play an instrument, sort of thing.
Yeah, and that was especially true of the kind of the Olympia kind of side of things, like bands like Heavens to Betsy were it was deliberately lo-fi. And I mean, some people argued at the time that it was like it's kind of a direct rejection of the kind of the masculine ideals of like mastery of the instrument. It's like deliberately not doing that. Yeah, and also it's a way to show other girls that you can do it too. So if you come out and you're bloody Steve Vai or something, then no one, you're not going to think you can do it. But if you come out and you're just doing basic chords, then any girl watching can think, hey, I can do that, right?
Steve Vai.
I don't know why Steve Vai came out. I don't know why that.
No, but it always makes me laugh. It's fucking that guy.
Yeah.
He's just a fucking. He's great on the guitar. There's no doubt about it. But fucking hell, Steve Vai. Everyone used to go on about Steve Vai, didn't they?
They did. Yeah. I haven't thought about it for a long time. It just popped into my head then. But it's deliberately lo-fi and simple, basically, as to make it more universal.
Should we talk about some of the bands involved in the scene?
It's up to you. I mean, I want to talk about the bands. I want to talk about the feminism side of it, because that's really important. What do you want to talk about first? Let's do the bands first. Go on, let's do the band. Okay, let's do the bands first.
Yeah, what
have you got?
Were the Bikini Kill, obviously, but who were the ones with them in Olympia at that time?
Well, so there's only a few main kind of Riot Girl bands. So Bikini Kill, Bratmobile, who started in Olympia, and they kind of went to DC with them.
Well, let's talk about those two first of all, because they're very different bands, Bratmobile and Bikini Kill. I think when you have a listen to them, they don't sound necessarily like each other. They've got the same message, but Bratmobile, they're really sort of DIY punk, aren't they? Simple guitar riffs and all that sort of thing. Whereas Bikini Kill were really sort of dirty guitars, really tight band, right? It's totally different in their nature.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Yeah, Bratmobile were much more lo-fi. In production-wise as well, right? You can hear it. A lot of it's kind of muffled sound, all that kind of lo-fi.
Yeah, really sort of 80s punk, some of it's sort of a bit Cure-like.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I think they're I mean, the kind of the predecessor, probably like the C86 scene in the UK. So like bands like the Pastels, who Kurt Cobain was a big fan of, right? The Pastels and like Tallulah Gosh and all of that kind of C86 lo-fi bedroom sound, which I was never a big fan of, but it was pretty influential. And Bikini Kill, on the other hand, they were much more like 70s punk, basically.
Yeah, real, but they're really sort of really accomplished musicians. It sounds like they were, totally different vibe.
Very short songs, right?
Yeah, kind of X-Ray Specs sound to them, I think. It's kind of the nearest comparison I can think of.
You can definitely hear, they've probably stolen it, but you can definitely hear Hole in there. I mean, Hole probably stole that. There's definitely some of that in there, I think.
You can imagine that a lot of the songs were probably based on that spoken word stuff that Kathleen Hanna would have been doing. I was just looking at some of the lyrics, and you could see us just shouting them on a stage or into a mic without the band.
And again, it's going back to what we talked about with Biss, the kind of the lyrics as like fanzine polemic as lyrics as well. So a lot of it goes back to the way fanzines are written as well. Well, zines were written, which is what they were doing.
It's more spoken word to music, right? A bit like we've spoken about the doors of poetry to music and all that sort of thing. This is like spoken word to music, isn't it?
Yeah, with a very strong, direct message. Yeah. But also, as well as that, so Kathleen also used to talk a lot in between songs as well. So stop and talk about issues as well. Yeah.
It's a whole message in the shows. Because like we said before, it wasn't all about the music, was it? It was more, it was the whole movement was important, not the music was just a way of getting it out to people, right?
Exactly. So like a live show was not just playing songs. It was
I think they used to hand out like flyers and stuff at the gigs and stuff, didn't they? So
flyers and zines and political messaging. Yeah. Which the only time I've experienced that is did you ever see Asian Dub Foundation live in the 90s?
I think so.
They had a bit of that going on, right?
I've forgotten about that.
So
we'll try and get that
political messaging. They had like a table set up with like flyers and literature and pamphlets and shit, right? All of that at a gig, which is really cool.
Yeah, no, I like all that.
Yeah, they were great. It'd be great to get Asian Dub Foundation.
It just adds another layer to the music, I think, when there's a real solid message behind it.
Yeah, well, that was the point. Yeah, more than the music.
So they're like the two big players, I guess.
Yeah.
But then we got other bands from that scene.
Yeah, it's about Heavens to Betsy were reasonably kind of big.
Because I had to listen to them. She's got like
very
really
lo-fi.
Yeah, but she's got really sort of John Lydon vocals, hasn't she? I think.
Really?
Sounds a bit Pistols. I think so, yeah.
Wow.
But then she's got that screamy edge to it as well. I like it. I like that. I thought she had a great voice. You sound like you disagree.
I think, well, personally, compared to like Bikini Kill and Bratmobile, I don't think they're as good for me. I don't like them as much, but I think
Who cares what you think?
Yeah, I guess. This, which we talked about this album before, right? When we get the 1991 Wang. So this International Pop Underground Convention, this happened in
we did.
In Olympia in August 91. So this was a pivotal moment.
All right, stop rustling it.
History of that.
People like the sound of that.
Video.
You haven't even opened it.
I'll get there one day.
You haven't even opened it.
A pivotal moment in the history of Riot Girl. It's kind of when the bands they like the first night of the convention was like all girls basically. Right. And a lot of kind of I think Heavens to Betsy might have been the first time they played even, and it kind of consolidated that there was a scene starting to happen basically.
So what's on that then?
This has got all kinds actually. It's got bands like Spinanes. It's got also Mechanormal were kind of in that. As well, Unwound, Bratmobile, band called Girl Trouble, but also Courtney Love is on there, Fugazi is on there as well, Nation of Ulysses.
Fucking hell. Here we go. Give it a rest.
I can't. Guy's a legend. But also other minor bands, Excuse 17, which featured Carrie Brownstein, who later went on to become Slater Kinney, and Portlandia. If you've ever seen Portlandia, the comedy sketch show.
Hang on, I haven't finished on it. Excuse 17. possibly a bit more melodic than some of the other bands. I could hear some
I'll give you that. Yeah.
Dinosaur Jr. riffs and stuff in there. That's what I
Right,
got from it anyway when I was
Sure,
having a listen.
sure.
I quite liked them. But yeah,
Yeah.
the vocal was a bit off key, but purposely so probably. That's just what they do, a lot of them, isn't it? Yeah. There you go. Carry on. Just thought I'd put that in.
Others, Team Dresch, who I really like, they were kind of they're often seen as like a queercore. But again, that was part of the whole Riot Girl movement.
I loved is it Team
Dresch?
Yeah. I loved it. I thought they were really, really well. So it was much more produced, the music from them, right? It wasn't so DIY.
Yeah, no, they weren't so much involved with all the zines and stuff, but they were more of a queercore band. It was just in the area, basically.
Yeah, they're more my kind of vibe. They were a bit less punky, more rock, I'd say. But I thought they were good from what I've heard. I'm going to check out some more of it. So thanks.
It's good. The whole album's good.
Episode.
Other band that I like, they're not quite Riot Girl, a band called Slant Six, based in DC, who I really like. They're not proper Riot Girl because they weren't really part of that, the kind of underground scene.
The notes I've made
the music's there.
On Slant Six are DIY punk, simple riffs, drums, etc.
Yeah, it's good enough, man. It's good enough. But I really like them personally. So they were ones that kind of grew out once. They were kind of bands that kind of saw Bikini Kill and formed their own band. Like it's a band called Emily's Sassy Lime. Yeah, which I think they were like 15 or 16. I think they just kind of saw Bikini Kill and thought, we're going to do that, and did it.
I've got dirty guitars with an innocent vocal up front.
I mean, they were like 15. They were literally like 15 years old.
Oh, there you go. Well, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
If you look on Spotify, the Riot Girl playlist, obviously you've got the bands you mentioned, but it's like spreading out. L7, Hull. They've even put PJ Harvey on that list. But I think there's probably good reasons for it. Tell us, Luke, what's the link?
Why aren't they? What's the reluctance to put them in that scene? Is it just because of their location and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, they're nothing to do with the scene. Basically, they weren't making DIY fanzines and seizing them into production. They were signing to major labels. They were girls in bands. Courtney hated the Riot Girl scene. She thought they were twee little
losers. You said that Kathleen Hanna punched her in the face.
Other way around.
Oh, Courtney Love punched Kathleen Hanna in the face.
Right in the face, yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. Why?
Because she was jealous of her friendship with Kurt.
You can't go and around punching people in the face.
Actually, in her book, Kathleen tells a story. So she was really good friends with Kurt, basically, when Kurt came out of this scene, right? Kurt came out of this Olympia scene, which is why Nirvana are not like the other grunge bands, right? And why he was into feminism, a sensitive boy, all of that, right? Yeah. And she says, like, after he married Courtney and stuff, she didn't really see him. And she said not long before he died, she was gonna go and see. She heard that like Courtney was away or whatever for a few weeks, so she wanted to go and see him just to see if he was okay, because she was worried about him. And she said she chickened out in the end, and then he died not long after that. So it's pretty sad, eh?
But the face punch, what's the story there? The context?
Backstage at a concert, I think Kathleen was watching Sonic Youth, and Courtney just strode straight up, and I think the word Kathleen uses is cold clocked. Clocked her in the face.
Sucker punch.
Sucker punch.
Yeah.
I think that's even worse. That's cowardly, isn't it?
And then boasted about it.
You can't cowardly. What was it? Cold
clocked.
Cold clocked. You can't do that to someone.
You wouldn't have a cold cock in the bathhouse.
I bet you fucking wouldn't. I've got other bands listed here, but I guess you'll probably get onto these anyway. But I'll go back.
Probably not. Go on. What have you got? I haven't got many more. Go on.
Jack Off Jill.
I know the name. Don't know them though. Know the name only. It's a good name.
They were good. They're sort of quite well produced. A bit more sort of rock than punk. A bit more like Team Dresch maybe. I'd say I've written that they were probably the most mainstream from that scene. So it's quite a mainstream sound. I liked them, Jack Off Jill. I think I'll be
Good name.
listening to
What
some
British
more of that
bands?
for sure.
Were there
Let's
any
get on to
British
that.
bands?
Do you want to mention any more before we get onto the Brits?
Well, I think this is a British band, Skin Team.
That's a British band.
Is
Yeah.
it?
So it eventually, basically, the music eventually spread out around the world. In the UK, the biggest band was Huggy Bear. So we talked about them with Terry Christian, right? They had their famous performance on The Word where there was
I watched it this morning.
Bit of a riot afterwards.
Really
That's
enjoyed
such a
it.
good song, that Her Jazz. Yeah, the whole kind of that. This is happening without your permission refrain.
Yeah, I like that.
Really
that's
good.
That's a really great lyric.
But that was the whole ethos of Riot Girl, is that we're not waiting for people to give us the okay. We're just gonna do it ourselves. Yeah. I would put Mambo Taxi in there as a UK representative of Riot Girl. Biss as well, I would. But they were a bit later. But
later. Yeah.
So do you ever got any more, Neil?
Well, Skin Teen,
yeah, they're pretty good.
Fucking recorders and triangles and shit.
It's lo-fi.
Yeah, it's good. Have a listen. There's a Peel session or something. Yeah, and it's just recorders and
There's not enough recorders and triangles.
Anything with a recorder in it it's got my vote.
Pussycat Trash was another UK band that got a little bit of traction at the time. But...
So for my question, like Hole and L7, they're almost like the anti-matter of it.
Well, I think people see them as like Riot Girl adjacent, but I don't think they were at all. I think they were the antithesis.
I think you make a good case for that.
I think it was just lazy. It's just lazy women in bands at that time.
Exactly.
But what about L7 though, specifically?
I mean, they're just a punk rock band, aren't they? And also, I mean, they were. Well, maybe we can talk about this when we get onto the feminism aspect of it. But they were, they were given the persona, they're like the traditional, like masculine rock persona, right? If you
that's true.
Watch a documentary, they're like, they were guys. They were out there drinking and fucking, and they were guys.
Right.
And the whole point of Riot Girl is that then they don't want to do that. They don't want to assimilate into mainstream male patriarchal rock culture. They want to be their own thing.
That's what it's like in the bathhouse. That drinking, and
mainstream drinking and fucking everywhere. I think they're the opposite of that. They're assimilating into male rock stereotypes, and Riot Girl's purposefully rejecting those. Right?
The Riot Girl movement. It was all based around, all the girls had their hair in bunches and stuff, makeup. They weren't trying to be men. They were very much being ladies.
Exactly. Yeah, there's a good quote about this actually. Let me find it from Kathleen Hanna.
That song "Alien She," that had quite interesting lyrics.
Yeah,
there's like this weird disassociation with that being seen as that girl who wears makeup and wanting to be pretty. It's like this split personality trying to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, also Kathleen Hanna, she's an interesting person, right? If you have you heard her in interviews, she speaks like a Valley girl. She's like, I'm like, it's like totally. She speaks like a Valley girl, but she's spouting radical feminist polemic, right? And she worked as a stripper a few times as well when she needed to make money. So people say, how can you reconcile this with feminism? But sure you can. Let me read out the quote about what we're talking about with L7. She says, "With what other female bands do is go. It's not important that I'm a girl. It's just important that I want to rock." So this is like the L7 approach, right? And that's cool, but that's more of an assimilationist thing. It's like they just want to be allowed to join the world as it is. Whereas I'm into revolution and radicalism and changing the whole structure. What I'm into is making the world different for me to live in. And that is the whole ethos of Riot Girl, which I think is cool as fuck, right?
So there's a difference between the two, right? That's answered Dave's question.
Before we move on, I think in terms of the music, because it was so kind of rudimentary and lo-fi for a lot of it, although I love it, the kind of the post Riot Girl bands, the music's much better. They're better bands, and the message is still there. Slater Kinney, who came out of Excuse 17, and I love Slater Kinney, one of my favorite bands basically. So really good. And after Bikini Kill. So Kathleen Hanna had a solo album, Julie Room, which I think is her masterpiece, basically. And then she had Le Tigre, who are just an amazing band, basically. Just really, really good songs.
So come on, let's talk feminism.
So it was there from the start because, you know, the zines were there before the music was there. But the interesting thing about it as a scene, so what happened was, so when they were basically in Washington DC for the summer, so they called a meeting, basically. The idea of Kathleen Hanna, a couple of other people, the idea was for kind of women to get together and discuss, you know, basically how they can kind of take punk rock forward. That was the idea. But instead, what happened is loads of mostly kind of teenage girls came and just sat around talking about loads of personal stuff, like all the sexual abuse and, you know, date rape and all these really serious topics that they have no one else to talk to about and nowhere else to talk about it too. And so these kind of like support groups were a fundamental aspect of Riot Girl, which is why it was such a very small movement. So they kind of spread out around the US. You know, these kind of small, I'm talking like, you know, literally like 6 or 7 people meeting at someone's house and just sharing their stories, basically. And there was a couple of Riot Girl conventions as well, over 93, 94, where again, people came together and they had support groups and stuff like that. And that was a big part of Riot Girl. And the interesting thing is, so it started happening before that. So again, Kathleen talks about it in her book. So like after the gigs, basically, she found that lots of girls were kind of staying behind and just like talking to her. Yeah. And she didn't really know what to say. So she went and got trained as like a counselor and started like doing counseling and volunteering as a counselor. So she knew how to do it properly. And then, that's what happened, I think, throughout their career, basically. So she'd just stay behind, sit at the edge of the stage after gigs for hours, just talking to girls coming up one by one, telling her their troubles, you know.
Did she have any experience herself of abuse that we know about?
Yeah, quite a lot. It says right at the start of her biography, you know, this is a story of male violence, and a lot of it is, yeah. But then, so these kind of prompted what then became like the third wave of US feminism. Second wave is like 70s. So it's all about like rights, getting equality and stuff like that, right? And that kind of transformed into 80s feminism, which was all about like, we need to get like women CEOs, we need to get women in parliament, in Congress, right? So this is where it was like when Riot Girl came along, and which is why it's important that it's Riot Girl and not Riot Woman, right? Because these were teenage girls and they didn't give a fuck about becoming the CEO, or that's not relevant to their lives. They needed a feminism that talked about, you know, boys in the classroom putting their hand up their skirt or whatever, shit like that, right? You know, being raped by their dad, you know, like really horrible, intense shit, which grown-up feminism wasn't dealing with at all, right? And so that is why that kind of prompted the third wave of US feminism, which was much more about like identity. So a lot of like the zines were like first-person confessionals, basically, you know, sharing your pain. We'll go on to it later, but it kind of got quite a bit of criticism later, but the idea was that it was much more personal. It was all about personal identity, and, you know, sharing your stories. And that is basically what happened with the third wave of feminism, which Riot Girl was basically invented.
It must just make the music much more intense if everyone's going to these gigs with that sort of shared experiences and all that sort of thing. It makes the music a whole different level, right?
Yeah, this album here, it's The Fakes. It's like a one-off side project of Kathleen Hanna and a few other people, and it's kind of spoken wordy and but musicy, and there's some really, really dark shit on there. Yeah. It's like it's stuff like, you know, feeling guilty for coming when you're being raped, shit like that. It's just
we haven't covered that on the podcast.
We haven't, but it shouldn't be taboo, right? It should be something that people talk about. People have experienced that, right? It needs to be talked about. So
I don't know. We need to talk about it much, but
We don't need to, but people
The
that
thing
might
is,
have that experience, right?
The trouble is,
Yeah.
if you start giving voice to that taboo, that'll just fuel, people you don't want to fuel, wouldn't it?
In what way?
Well, the idea that can happen will not be understood by the vast majority of people, so it's going to be counterproductive.
Yeah, but that music's not for the vast majority of people. But it's for the people that need to hear it, are the people that are going to hear it, right? So a little bit at the time, but especially kind of in retrospect, like Riot Grrrl has been criticised for being, especially its feminism, for being very white and middle class.
Okay,
basically.
right, yeah.
Oh yeah, that brings me to the podcast I was listening to, Starting a
What's
Riot.
it called?
Were you Starting a Riot?
Starting a Riot.
Fabi Rayner.
It's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was talking about that a lot.
It's really good. Did you listen to all the episodes?
Pretty much, yeah. All the ones
it's quite good,
were hosted by Fabi, yeah.
So go on, tell us your take on that.
Like you say, a lot about how a bit critical of the movement, how it didn't feel open if you weren't white. But
That's
that making the point they weren't excluding white people. It's just how it felt. And interview with I can't remember. I think it was a black trans person from the South who reached out to Kathleen Hanna, and they had correspondence, and her experience of it was really good. Yeah, it was quite interesting.
Yeah. Highly recommended, by the way, if you're listening. It's what's it called? Starting a Riot, I think. Right?
Starting a Riot, and it's on
really good.
all the.
It's only like a six part or something like that, right? There's an interesting article I read, Riot Grrrl Race and Revival by Mimi Nguyen, and they argue that it was kind of the whole idea of like the confessional zine kind of individualizes oppression rather than tackling systemic oppression.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Because it's from a personal experience, isn't it?
Exactly. So you're not taking on board. You're not. It lacks like historicity and context.
This episode's not as fun as the usual ones, is
it? Come on.
I think it's interesting to me, but I hope people aren't here for the laughs, are they? They're here to find out.
This is serious shit.
Serious shit, man. I think it's a very valid criticism. However, I mean, to be fair, like intersectionality itself, I mean, the word wasn't coined until like 1989, right? And it was just when Riot Grrrl was getting going. So intersectional feminism was not kind of widely used anywhere, basically, by anyone. So I think it's slightly unfair to criticize them for lack of intersectionality. But I mean, at the same time, I think that they're very valid criticisms. And Kathleen kind of acknowledges it in her book and says, it's probably a little bit the case.
You can imagine to be a black woman in the US or Britain, you've got all the shit that Riot Grrrl are talking about, plus double
stuff.
Well, no, that's a pretty it's not how intersectionality works, but
the shit they're sharing with the Riot Grrrl, that's similar, right? That the horrors of racial oppression aren't necessarily the same kind of thing, are they? It's different.
No, but intersectionality is not plus A plus B. It's not female plus black. It produces a whole new situation. Do you know what I mean? It's not an additive thing. It produces a completely different oppression. So it's a bit of a simplified look at it. It's interesting though. Also the idea that so like they talk about like like white girls kind of slumming it by I was a stripper and I'm really edgy, and so well for a lot of poor people, especially in America, that's often like a byword for black. They got no choice. They can't just be a stripper for 2 months and go back to their normal life. They're destined for a life of doing those kind of jobs, right? So
is that what it was then for Kathleen Hanna? She literally didn't need to be a stripper. She just fancied.
Well, she didn't have any. No, I mean, she made virtually no money from both of bands, basically, from Bikini Kill and La Tigre. Mainly because they played tiny shows. They played a lot of benefits, right? So they thought, hey, you're the feminists, come and play our benefit. Well, okay, sure, but we need to get paid at some point. And she made virtually no money from both of her main bands. Yeah. She said she got married to Ad Rock because her health insurance ran out.
It wasn't a scene based around success, was it?
No, but that's the whole point, right? Keeping control of the means of production, but which means we need to get onto that. So what happened was in like 92, it kind of went mainstream. So they did an interview with a couple of the bands, I think, did an interview with, I think, USA Today. And then they printed this like ridiculous article about, you know, kind of making fun of them, really, talking about like Riot Girl. And then it went everywhere. And then they were like, you know, style guides, how to dress Riot Girl. And basically mainstream press started attacking them from all sides, basically. So they refused to speak to the press after that. Basically, they did like a media blackout. The whole scene did, and that pissed the press off even more, which meant that they were writing even more ridiculous shit because no one would speak to them, and it just got really out of hand.
That's interesting.
It is interesting, and there's a really interesting quote from. Do you remember our friend Stephen Wells that came up in the Ed Smash episode? He directed the video for "I Want to Kill Somebody," and he said the most bizarre aspect of the backlash has been its niggling, nitpicking nature. He said, he's talking about Huggy Bear. He said they've had their ideology combed over, examined, misinterpreted, rewritten, and kicked to death 100 times. Talk about breaking a butterfly on a wheel. If the Clash or Dylan or Bob Bloody Marley had suffered such intense scrutiny, they would have all failed the examination. So it's the idea that because they were women, they were getting scrutinized more, and they were being, every little tiny thing was being picked up on, and they were made to justify every little tiny thing, right? They were ultra scrutinized, and even when they were told the truth, their truth wasn't believed or wasn't accepted, right? And again, it's just pure misogyny, you know.
Do you think the scene would have been bigger or more mainstream if grunge hadn't come around?
No, it went hand in hand. No. It was happening at the same time. So the main period of Riot Girl was like 91 to 94, basically. By 94, it was mostly over, but yeah.
Yes, it kind of helped.
Grunge was the same, right?
Yeah.
Never mind to Kurt's death is 91 to 94. So they went hand in hand. Are you saying did grunge overshadow?
Yeah, I think so.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Right. I don't think it would have been it would have been bigger anyway. I don't think. I think it wasn't that wasn't what it was, you know.
I've got a note here. I want to try and get it into the discussion somehow. Massive
Make
event.
it light-hearted.
Shoehorn it
a
in.
massive event that happened in 93, so the right time.
Yeah.
When you remember the Bobbits had
yeah.
Lorena and was
Lorena.
it Lorena and Charles Bobbitt or something?
Charles, was it?
You remember
she
cut off his
chopped
dick.
his knob off.
Cut his knob off. Yeah.
And then she drove off with it she had it in her hand and drove around the estate and then chucked out the window because she couldn't drive properly.
Yeah.
And then she felt remorse, phoned the police.
Yeah.
Told them where it was. They recovered it, sewed it back on. Right. He recovered and was starred in porn films.
Yeah. She helped him out.
Beautiful story. It's a happy ending. That was 93, was it? That's incredible.
Yeah. But it's so related because she did it because he was abusing her non-stop. It's quite an interesting debate.
We're not advocating for knob chopping now, are we?
Well, exactly. That's the debate, isn't it? Was she justified?
Sure.
You know, was it okay?
Well, yeah, if he was abusing her, then yeah, I think so.
That's a wild story, though, isn't it? It really is.
How could she cut it off and him not waking up and stopping it?
Well, it wouldn't take long to cut it off, would it?
Sparko drunk, right? He might have been.
Yeah,
what did
maybe.
She do? A knife or some scissors?
A knife.
Yeah, but that's quick, isn't it? Just one swoosh,
swift movement, fine. I mean, she's kind of like...
There's no bone in there, is there, to cut through?
Why is it called a boner?
Humans are the only mammal without a bone in it. Did you know that?
What?
And it's called a boner.
humans are the only mammal without a bone in their penis. Is that true?
True.
You just made that up.
I did not. It's fact.
So much shit.
Just look it up.
No, I'm not. I don't want that on my search history.
Listeners will know it's true. Anyway, I did manage to get it into the conversation.
Yeah.
I've got a note here saying that Kathleen Hanna hated being the face of Riot Girl.
Yeah.
And that's
Have you?
from an interview of another podcast called Going Through It, had an interview with her, which is quite interesting.
Yeah, she talks about it in the book. She didn't see herself as the leader of anything or the poster girl for anything, and didn't.
That's
enjoy
again,
it.
a recurring theme that the people who should be leaders don't want to be leaders.
Well, she said it made it, especially for like counselling sessions and stuff. She said, she started turning up to like support groups and stuff, and everyone would be like, "Oh wow, it's Kathleen Hanna," and giggling every time she spoke. And she said, "Well, nothing can't get anything done if it's going to be like this, right?"
It's a bit like when I turn up for events.
What happens?
Same shit.
People laugh.
People sigh.
You get carried aloft. Fucking hell. Colin. And she said like she got a reputation of being like a total bitch and all this kind of stuff, and of course she wasn't. There's a really good documentary. If you can't read, there's a really good documentary about her called The Punk Singer.
Well, I should have talked about this earlier, but you wanted to be friends with Biss, didn't you? Well, I think it might be happening.
Oh, come on!
Got a message from I think it's from Amanda.
Not Spaceship Steve.
Not Spaceship Steve. I just said, thanks for coming on the podcast. And she said, it was great chatting to Luke. What a nice guy he is. Exclamation mark.
Exclamation mark.
Yeah. So, it sounds like she wants to be your friend.
Hey. My DMs are open.
Why don't you make a move, Luke?
See, this is a problem with
Dave,
with girls in rock. You're just sexualizing. You're just sexualizing it. Exactly.
I'm not. No,
you've
I'm
just
not
proved
doing
the point. That
exactly.
Riot Girl are against.
I haven't proved any such thing. You can say when you want to form a friendship, make a move. I didn't mean anything.
Yeah,
sexual.
you assumed.
Oh, yeah.
Luke's
You've been hanging out at the bar
houses
too much.
No, this is your nonsense last week, whenever it was. I'll talk about what happened after.
After what?
After Riot Girl.
Okay, so the Riot Girl movement finished was, what'd you say, 94-ish?
I say 94. Yeah. Yeah, so like 91, 92 was like the peak, basically, of Riot Girl, especially like touring and stuff. 93, loads of records were released, like loads of cool records. But by 94, I think the whole kind of the media kind of hubbub had kind of killed the whole thing, basically.
If you listen to that podcast we were talking about, which was just from last year, you wouldn't really have the sense that it's finished. I mean,
that phase of it finished. Yeah, it is. Yeah. Bikini Kill kept going till 97. After that, Kathleen did a solo album. She formed La Tigre. They went until 2005, and then she got really ill with Lyme disease, which, if you watch the documentary Punk Singer, so she withdrew from public life for like nearly a decade, basically. But recently she's reformed La Tigre and Bratmobile, and she's got a version, another band called The Julie Ruin as well. So she's doing loads and loads of stuff recently. Slater Kinney went on to do loads of cool stuff. They have a great band called Wild Flag as well. Yep, they are. They had a new album recently. And there's new bands. For example, a band like the Linda Lindas are kind of a great example of kind of new Riot Girl. They did that racist, sexist boy song in the library in LA. Do you remember? It went viral in lockdown. Do you remember that? That's really cool. And in that film, there's a film called Moxie on Netflix, which is about Riot. It's kind of about a teenage girl, and she discovers like bikini kill from her mum and stuff. It's quite good. And the Linda Lindas are in that. So they're going on.
So it lives on.
Yeah, lives on. Yeah.
Right. So there we go. That's it. I think we've covered most of it, or most that we know about, or Luke's covered most of it.
Apologies for any misunderstandings or errors.
Get in the comments. Tell us which bands you like from the Riot Girl movement, or any stories you've got from that time, or just pick us up on anything we got wrong.
Definitely, especially all the feminism stuff. We definitely don't claim to be any expert on that. So yeah, let us know.
So, yeah,
pick us up.
Get in the comments and educate us. If you have enjoyed it, then please do give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel if you're watching. If you're listening, then please do rate and review, because it really does help the podcast get found.
Also, a couple of bands that we talked about, Mambo Taxi and Biss, we have interviews with them in our archives. So if you haven't listened to them yet, go back and give them a listen. They're really good.
Yeah, for sure. Luke, the mixtape coming along for this week?
Coming along, yep, I've started
I
it.
presume there'll be some Riot Girl on there.
There might be a couple of tracks, yeah.
Dave, it's time for you to wrap up the Riot Girl special.
See you in a minute.